Hi, welcome to another Expert Insights discussion. Today we're joined by two guests, Nikki, who is Head of Business Development at Get Into More, and Vasilis, who is CEO and founder at Juyo Analytics. Just to highlight, both Get Into More and Juyo Analytics are expert partners with Revenue Hub. In this discussion, we pose the question, is the hotel mindset more like Nokia or Apple? It is a fairly broad-ranging discussion, touching on customer centricity and looking at should we adopt a customer-centric commercial strategy as we look to move forward post-COVID. We look at how a customer-centric focus could be translated into a hotel's meetings and events offering and pricing, and also discuss how this might apply to rooms pricing and positioning as well. We then look at competitor sets and have hotels adapted their comp sets in this post-COVID world. Finally, touching on the topic of segmentation and asking, is it too broad a term to be useful now? And is it outdated when we have so much more granular data available? Really hope you enjoy the discussion. And if you like what we're doing, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you know when we have new content, and please don't forget a simple thumbs up. It really helps raise the profile of the channel, and in that way, you can help us to help others. Anyway, hope you enjoy it. Roll the intro. Hi guys, how are you both? Nikki, you well?
Hi Trevor, how are you doing? I'm doing great today. Happy to be here.
Super, thank you. And Vasilis, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you again.
And to see you again too. Now, we got you guys on. It's going to be slightly different to some of the videos that we've done before where we've maybe looked at a particular area and gone a little bit tactical and granular into it. And this is more just sort of broader ranging discussion, let's say, under the kind of working title of, are hotels more like Nokia or like Apple? Will they be a bit more like Apple and maybe start to look more outwardly, not be so internally focused, look outwardly? How can they utilize their space differently? How can they be utilized data differently? How can they be focusing externally and then kind of use that to drive their products and their promotions and their pricing? So that's kind of the angle that we're going to take around this. So before we kick into that, maybe just useful to get both of you to give us a brief introduction, just to kind of position and people understand kind of who you are and why you're here. So Nikki, do you want to kind of go first for us?
Of course. So I'm Nikki. I'm responsible for all things commercial at Get Into More, the #1 business intelligence tool for meetings and events. Joined the company at the very start and haven't had a dull day ever since.
Brilliant. Well, that's a good thing to say. and Vasilis.
Yeah, and I'm the founder of Juyo Analytics, which is a BI data analytics company for hospitality, and also happen to be the co-founder of Get Into More. So technically, with Nikki, we're half colleagues.
Yeah.
Half colleagues. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you for that. So if we're taking that, kind of working with that theme of Nokia or Apple, let's start with kind of some Apple thinking first, which is more around being customer focused. So as they looked outside to see, let's not build a phone that just replicates what's already there. Let's go out and actually look at how people want to use the phones, how we think they will in the future, and then let's design something once we know what people want. Let's maybe kick off with that customer focused element and maybe taking one point. We hear people talking about customer focused pricing. So kind of wrapping that customer focused piece, the customer focused pricing element in that together. What exactly does customer focused mean, or customer focused pricing mean? Who wants to take that one on?
Well, I'm happy to go first. Ladies
on,
first, you know. You're a gentleman.
How we try.
Well, I think you touch on some very interesting subjects there. Well, customer-centric pricing, customer centricity in hospitality. Like, let's take it one step further and not only look at the idea of customer-centric pricing, but let's call it a customer-centric commercial strategy, where you have customer-centric sales, you'll have customer-centric marketing, and customer-centric revenue management, where you really look at the total value of of a person walking through your hotel doors or of a booking, and not just pricing a hotel room, for instance.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's at the first sort of step is about defining who you are and what you are. So it's a decision that you need to take, and then you need to wake up and then you need to say, hey, am I a phone or am I something else?
Okay.
And am I a hotel or can I be something else? And if you ask that question, inevitably you need to start looking towards the customer, because you'll find out that it's not you deciding who you are, but it's the customer deciding what you're going to become.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think in terms, just picking up on your point there, Nikki, about the marketing, the sales, and the revenue. I mean, we've spoken a lot, and we'll come on to that into another area that we're going to touch on. But to me, being customer focused by definition means you almost need to start to align those three elements. Is that what you were kind of leading into?
Yeah. Those, I would say, those three people, if it's three people, they definitely need to share an office. Like, you can't take one out and then start working separately. So I think marketing, probably they are well adjusted to the idea of being very hyper personalized in their targeting. And there's probably some lessons there for revenue management to learn from marketing and sales, for instance.
Vasilis, you have any? You're nodding at that.
Yeah, revenue management needs to become more marketeers. Actually, hotels need to become more marketeers. That's for sure. And especially in an environment where generating demand is really, really important. You know, you need to forget about what you were doing before and how you looked at things before. You need to say, okay, what matters now? Okay, putting people in my hotels. What do I need to learn? Not inventory management, marketing.
Very good point. And just picking up on something you said there as well, Nikki, about being customer centric and a customer-centric commercial strategy. And I think you mentioned something there, Vasilis, as well, about sort of, are we a hotel, or what do our customers actually want, and how do we support those needs? So more the Apple way of looking at it, and then how can we furnish that, rather than the Nokia way, which is, okay, this is our product, how do we sell that product? And I guess picking up on the Get Into More piece, and Nikki, your space of the meeting and events, which has been hit pretty hard. I mean, where does customer centricity, how, where, and maybe why could that fit in and be maybe more productive?
Good question. I think if you look at meetings and events and customization, customer centricity, it's even pacing behind on what you see with your regular leisure business, right? If I'm lucky and I do an inquiry for meetings and events, let's say pre-pandemic times, I could answer three questions probably. Do I want half a day or a full day? What do I want to eat for lunch? And pick a shape. Like, third question is pick a shape. Do we want a U shape? Do we want a square shape? Do we want an oval? That's the three questions I got to answer. And I think if you dig a little deeper and you really ask your meeting guests what they want, you will find out that there is more that differs than just a simple shape. So if you want to delight, and if you want to stand out from your competition, and if you want to be customer centric in meetings and events, I think it's a good idea to take a step back from your offering and talk to the organizers and see what are they really looking for. Like, what are you trying to achieve with this meeting gathering of people? And probably in the beginning, they're going to say half day sandwich lunch U-shape, because we've sort of raised them in a way that's
Yeah,
those are the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have been conditions to answer those 3 questions for us. So like, ask some more questions, see what comes out of it, and well, I guarantee you're gonna have some interesting conversations there.
Vasilis, anything to?
No, I love that. You're absolutely right, Nikki. It's ask different questions, and how refreshing is that when we as customers experience something different, and the first question that the person in front of us asks us is not what we expected, and we're right. I didn't expect that question, and then suddenly it becomes an experience because you feel that you'll be guided towards something different. Mm-hmm. And yeah, absolutely, we need to do that in meeting and events. What's your goal? Absolutely, spot on.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 elements in there. I think one is as you say, it's going and asking the question, but firstly realizing that maybe we should go and ask different questions. Mm-hmm. And again, this is not reverting back to type. What did we do before? I think the second thing is then picking up on your point, Vasilis. What is the goal? What do they actually want to achieve from this meeting? Because maybe the way that the meeting then gets structured, set up, what shape is appropriate or not appropriate at all, should really be defined. I guess that's what you're saying, Nikki, about what the goal is.
Yeah, exactly. And in a way, I would suggest we depackage our packages. Mm-hmm. We're very used to selling packages, and then there's like a standard, deluxe, and a super deluxe package. So depackage and see what's in there. So probably there's going to be some food involved. There's going to be some audio, some AV, all different things that we can add to meetings. But why not start from the purpose? Like, what are these people here? What do they want to come and achieve here? And then start hooking on different experiences that we can offer. Mm-hmm. And in that way, tailor something that will be very close to excellent for those specific people coming to your hotel to meet. Now, obviously, if you do that, you're gonna have to take into account, or you have to consider cost. And pricing and so on as well. So the package, it's plug and play, right?
Yeah.
Well, with pricing, I'd say that customers would be ready to pay more for that. Definitely. Actually. So rather than, hey, do you want super sandwich or a seated lunch?
Or the phrase that we touched on when we were talking about this, the banquet.
The banquet.
Yeah, the banquet. I mean, which banquet setup do you want?
do you want people dressed in Elizabethan or Edwardian costumes to come in and sit with you? Yeah. I mean, what kind of terminology is that in the day?
one or 2 pigs with an apple in the mouth.
Yeah. And I think as well, just thinking about that in terms of terminology and depackaging your package, and then looking at how that can be priced. I think your point about paying more, if you feel that you just as a consumer of anything, if you are going out and buying something that is mass produced, you expect a price that reflects the efficiencies created by that mass production. So if you only have 3 levels of service or 3 offerings, your consumer is just expecting that to be fairly standard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they expect a standard price. By making it bespoke, not only are you aligning it to what the guests want, what the meeting is there to achieve, but suddenly by building a bespoke package, you move into an area where maybe your ability to price that slightly differently, and not only just generating more revenue, but by being able to understand your costs, maybe look at making it more profitable, could in itself just be, more I would think, if nothing in itself, just more interesting to be having those kind of conversations.
Yeah, and and it's interesting what you say, because then coming back to your question about customer focused pricing, if you do that and you have all these options, etc., you're moving the reference point from price itself to what kind of value I'm getting.
Yeah, good point.
And if you move that thinking there, then price is not a problem anymore, because we're talking about value and what return we're getting out of this. What are we going to achieve as an organization by sort of buying whatever we need, so to speak?
No, that makes sense. That
Yeah,
makes
exactly.
sense. And I think one area as well, and this is sort of a phrase that you've used, Nikki, before, and I think this kind of almost comes right back to the starting point of how you maybe start to reframe your way of thinking and your questioning. But you've sort of repurposed the SaaS acronym. So how have you repurposed that? Have you pinched it and used it?
So that is going to be confusing for future discussions. But now we have SaaS as software as a service, but also space as a service. So we have already taken one step back, right? Where we said, okay, talk to these guests. What do they want to achieve? Depackage and add some things. But still then we are leaving revenue on the table because we are still selling meetings or events. And if you would look at your average meetings and events purposed hotel, you will see that evenings, weekends, a lot of space is unutilized. It's just simply empty. And I think the reason for that is because meetings and events also, again, limits what you can do with that space. Bosses that organize meetings in weekends or on evenings, they don't make themselves very popular. So Vasilis, take note.
It was a barbecue you're referring to. It wasn't a meeting.
No. But I think if you repurpose meetings and events and you start calling it space as a service, a whole world of opportunities opens. Because there's a multitude of options that you can fill a square meter with.
No, that makes sense. So I guess in a way, kind of any other points on that, Vasilis, from a sort of meetings and events space? I want to broaden this out a little bit more, but
no, I think you need to. Nikki is right. You need to think about, hey, I have these square meters. The customer has some expectations. What is in between? What's the connection? What do I do with this? And the answer is not what you've defined yourself at the very beginning. The answer is many different things.
Yeah. And I think that takes us then back to our overarching question. So if I reopen and I have meetings and events and I continue with my 3 products and my 3 questions that I ask and I go out to my usual customers, then I would hazard a guess that I have Nokia thinking. Here's my product. I go and sell it in the same way that I have. If instead I think of it as I have square meterage, I have space as a service, what questions do I need to go and ask to look at how that space could be utilized? And then how do I structure packages that reflect the needs and requirements of those people that I'm talking to and how I can best utilize that space? Then that feels a bit more as if it's customer centric, and that feels a little bit more like Apple thinking. Would that?
Absolutely. And there's so many opportunities out there. Like, I bet you that in every boardroom of every company, what people are discussing now is, our people have actually worked at home for 1 year now. They haven't talked to each other in real time. How do we get them back together? How do we get the culture going again? How do we get them to collaborate on the future projects? How do we get them to, let's say, be together in a hybrid environment where they don't need to come every day at the office? How are we going to do all these things? And, all these questions, hotels have a role to play, and they can answer it in one way or another. I mean, we're in a great position to answer these questions. It's all about hospitality. We know how to do this. We need to just think different. Coming back to Apple, but
And I think
this podcast is not sponsored by Apple.
or Nokia.
Or Nokia.
I think an interesting concept that I wanted to add here is called like the cost of inaction.
Okay.
Of course, you can come back and do whatever you have been doing before, and probably you'll have some success with that. Some people will still go for it. On the other hand, we know firsthand that there are some innovators in the space. There are hotels that are changing their ways and becoming more customer centric. And the cost of inaction is probably, if we go back to our Apple and Nokia discussion, like, how do you like the newest Nokia smartphone? Like, I don't know it.
Exactly. No, precisely. So let's broaden this out slightly. Well, not slightly, but kind of to the hotel and the rooms scenario. Now there is a little story. We won't necessarily mention the hotel specifically, but maybe as a way of illustrating this point in a moment, if you want to, Vasilis, we'll pick up on that story that you told us when we first spoke about this. But how packaging, positioning, promoting, if we're talking about changing the way of how we talk about meetings and events, how does that apply to hotel rooms?
Yeah, we're broadening it a little bit up as well. Let's say, so from a hotel room perspective, I think it's also the same. You can see it as the part of meeting and events as well. It's, how do you define a hotel room, which is, hey, if it's all about getting people to sleep, well, then I need a bed, and then I'm a hotel room. So, but then you can sort of look at across and see what other segments or demands I can generate out there in sort of let's say different areas. You can turn a hotel room into an office. You can turn a hotel room, not necessarily book it by the night, but you have all sorts of other market segments that you can attract with these square meters. So going hybrid, I think, is really, really important. The other thing is that often hotels really forget what they have, what they're good at, and what they have as a story to say. I mean, storytelling is really, really powerful, and talking about where you come from, what you stand for, etc., is really, really important. And the hotels often forget it. And that example that you mentioned was a hotel that has created a wonderful story, around the city that they're in, and let's say around let's say inviting, let's say, the city into the hotel, and sort of having artists in a room, sort of doing let's say different things in terms of the decoration, etc. And then that gives you a wealth of things to play with from a communication strategy. But instead they're thinking, let's celebrate the 50 years anniversary of the hotel. And obviously that is stupid. Nobody really cares about the 50th anniversary of the hotel. People want to be inspired, and if you need to look deep into yourself to say, hey, what do I have that I can inspire people, and sort of communicate around it, I think.
And I think what you picked up, and what I picked up when you were sort of outlining that story to me earlier, was that I think the first thing that struck me, and you've highlighted it there, is they engaged with their local community. So the people around them, and that gave them a chance to fully understand where the hotel sits in the community and what the hotel's value could be to the community. And it was started off, as you say, because there was an anniversary and they wanted to reflect how long it had been there and how important. So all the reasoning behind it made sense. We've been an important part of the community and how the community can interact with us. But then I think what struck me was that then after they put all this effort together and they then went out and positioned themselves in the market, I think you said the terminology that they used around their rooms and how they named their rooms, was just like back to Nokia thinking, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. So you can do all these wonderful things with your rooms and having all these different universes, and then you call it standard, superior, and deluxe. Well, okay. Nobody wants to buy something standard today. Actually, that is probably
Standard is
90%
the worst
of
name for a room. Yeah.
of the hotel rooms in the world I call standard.
Yeah.
Why should they be called standard? That's crazy. That's just unbelievable. Just basic stuff. We should just ban this. It should be
standard. No. It's as much as saying it's acceptable. Like you'll manage to sleep here.
Yeah, it's got a bed.
It's got a bed.
Exactly. Yeah,
can wash yourself.
Yeah, terrible.
But I think what's interesting is again, it's coming back to this understanding. It's like these concentric circles, isn't it? People talk about the center of influence, and you focus on where you can influence, and then you work out from there. And in a way, from a hotel's point of view, and again, we're generalizing, depending what sort of property you are. If you buy an airport, it's probably not the local market that's kind of key for you. But if you're in a city property, the local market, probably you're part of that integral community hub. So being able to engage and understanding the place that you sit within that community, but then also understanding, and this was a conversation I've had in a previous podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but we were talking about how many people come and stay in a hotel, but how much time is actually invested sitting down and talking with the guests to understand why they booked your hotel, how they found the experience of booking your hotel, why they've come to this location, why they wanted to stay here, how they are finding it. There is this treasure trove of data that exists outside of just what comes through your piece of technology, but there's someone there who, fine, give them something for free, put a cocktail or whatever it may be, but have a chance to sit down and talk with them. And it's almost that engagement doesn't seem to happen. And maybe there's a reason behind it. I'm not a hotelier. People can tell me. And if you do, comment on this video. But, just tell me why you can't engage with your guests and ask them the question.
But it's definitely a good idea to walk away from assumptions, really. We assume why people are there, but is that really why they are there? And, well, there will be interesting lessons to be learned there. And, well, you were talking about community before, and I'm going to hijack this podcast again and talk about meetings and events. But talking about community, that also really impacts that entire space as a service topic that we were talking about before. Because you will need to investigate your local community and also see, like, what are these guys doing here, left, right, and center of my hotel? What are they missing? Like, for instance, if you look at Antwerp here, my boyfriend is a musician, so he's always looking for rehearsal space. There is no rehearsal space, so he needs a place where he can put all his instruments and where he can rehearse. He always rehearses at 8 in the evening, so not when there are meetings. Hotels have so much space, like maybe, obviously, if it's not going to disturb other guests, but make some basement rooms and put some rehearsal stuff there.
Or maybe you have him rehearse in a bar and then suddenly you have live music.
Yeah,
on a good day that could work. On a good day that could work.
I mean,
that's assuming he's any good, Vasilis. I mean, I don't
he shouldn't begin yesterday or something. Well, hopefully he has some history, which I know that he has. But
we'll also put the Spotify link below the video.
Exactly. Coming back to the customer, I'll give you a really good story. And asking questions to the customer. So I was working in a company, and then there was a hotel, and I was a revenue manager at that point, and we had troubles getting our average rate, let's say, higher than a certain level. So we get a lot of pressure because we couldn't get the average rate that was expected from that hotel. And we couldn't get our heads around it. It didn't work. And the market was doing good and we were not doing good. And anyhow, so we were looking at it from a revenue management perspective. It was like, okay, maybe we need to buy another system. Maybe we need to, I don't know, let's try this and let's try 25% off and manipulate the rate and all these weird sort of revenue management tactics. So I'm a revenue manager. They're not weird tactics, but so so that's what we tried. And then we said, well, let's ask the customers. Let's do a survey when people arrive at reception, and we're going to ask them, hey, if you wouldn't have stayed with us, where would you have booked? Because we are looking at our STR reports, right? And customer doesn't care about STR reports. No. Obviously, he doesn't really know what it is. And that's not how he looks at it. But we like to look at it that way, for sure. So, and then we went around and we asked, I think, 400 people during the first weekend, and then we did a little bit more, etc. If you hadn't booked with us, where would you have stayed? And the majority, 60% of the customers were saying, I would have stayed with friends. At home. So basically, we were competing with free. Yeah. So how can you get your rates up if you're competing with free? Then you start realizing, well, actually, we're communicating on the wrong market. We need to turn this around. We need to think, who are we talking to? And we need to think, hey, the marketing person, hey, call that person. Let's involve him once in our strategy. Let's get him to help us here. And if we wouldn't have spoken to the customers, it wouldn't have been a revelation, because we were expecting, the Sheraton, the Hilton, the this, the that, these traditional answers. That's what we were expecting. And I said, I would have stayed with friends. I said, really? Okay, let's rethink this.
Yeah, and I think that also brings us to another interesting topic. Well, Trevor, we got the permission to free flow a bit today, right?
Yeah, go for it.
But reminds me of who are you competing with, really? And that's also something that's changing. You are competing obviously with other hotels around the corner, but in meetings and events, you'll be competing with co-working spaces, with the office, maybe even with a coffee shop around the corner. So things are changing and they're moving around.
You're absolutely right, Nikki. And, if you would do a search, for instance, on different cities to confirm your point, say, do a search in, let's say Frankfurt, right? Mm-hmm. And then you search to book a meeting room, but you want instant confirmation. And you go on all these online platforms that are mushrooming now, which is a trend that you have brought up as well of the distribution landscape. And what you will see that everything that has instant booking is not hotels.
Yeah.
Why? Why are we not jumping on that yet?
Because
hotels should be the first ones. No, you need to send a fax, maybe.
Fax your passport.
Nokia thinking.
But there is a huge opportunity here, right? We see that more people are working remotely. These people will need to meet. Office space is declining. But if you want to be the ones that benefit from this, you will need to make some changes on your end as well, be it instant booking and confirmation, but being the one that sends out the offer that's best for this new targeted group. Because obviously, we'll have office space that will become empty because there will be less, full-time leases. But what's going to happen with that office space?
Mm-hmm. And again, will that office space be reconstituted? Because as companies are, you read a lot of the time now, certainly we're seeing a lot in the UK of companies saying to their staff, right, 2, maybe 3 days maximum in the office if you want. Yeah. Or suddenly they're not going to need, if they coordinate when those people are coming in, they're not going to need that level of office space. So that office space will be repurposed.
Exactly.
Is that going to be picked up by these short-term office? So now the hotel will have greater competition because there is more office space available, or will that be converted maybe because of the problem with housing and trying to draw people back into the cities? Because, governments realize that if people aren't going to work in the cities, then all of those cafes and restaurants and coffee shops and sandwich shops now have less customers. So will they repurpose some of those offices, convert them into housing to bring people to come and now live back in the centers because they need people to keep those economies going? But then those people also will want spaces where they can meet outside of coffee shops.
Yeah.
So there's a whole dynamic that is shifting in and around the way that work is going to operate. But I think also just picking up on your comp set, and yeah, we did say we freestyle a little bit. But I think I wonder how many hotels are putting short-term rental, short-term vacation rental, Airbnb in their comp set.
Mhm.
Because if people are now going to stay in cities as Europe starts to open, if we just focus on Europe, you guys are in Europe, I'm in the UK. If we just focus on that for the time being, we're trying to encourage, the UK to be going into Europe and vice versa. Well, are people going to want to go and stay in a hotel? If they can't clearly find policies and everything outlined, but they think, well, we could rent somewhere, that becomes self-isolating in a way, and then we can go out and explore that city, and we can then find the restaurants and cafes that seem to have the right protocols in place that make us feel comfortable. Well, suddenly that's another competitor for the hotels. But are they bringing that into their comp set? I don't know.
And I think you need to think about it from a sort of, let's say, opportunity point of view, rather from an point of view of, we need to defend whatever will be taken away from us, but really thinking about where is this world going and what role can I play, instead of rushing to brick wall whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're going to come up with weird things. But if you do it properly, and then you're thinking, hey, here's these global trends, and here's these local trends, and here's what's happening in my neighborhood, and here's the role that I can play, and here's who we are as a hotel, and what we're going to become. And we're going to start thinking outside of the walls of whatever we're doing here. Then it's an opportunity, and then you will really sort of, you will be a gateway to the destination. You will be perceived differently. And I think there indeed you need to watch what alternative is not so alternative anymore, but let's call it alternative for the sake of it, is doing. However, hotels have, let's say, the roots of hospitality is in hotels. I mean, that hotels was one of the first businesses, right? Hospitality is universal. So I think it was maybe the first or the second, work.
Professional,
something like that.
Industry, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So where am I going with this? So so you have a role to play, that maybe arriving in an apartment it's all great and it sounds fantastic, but arriving in an apartment, trying to find where the damn key box is to actually find the key that opens the door, that you go, am I on the right floor? I'm not on the right floor. Where's the light? Like all these sort of things. Yes, there's something nice about this alternative accommodation, but if you do things right in a hotel and you bring the city into your hotel and you think about it differently, you have an advantage. But if you think about it as a box with rooms and beds, well, obviously, alternative accommodation is going to steal your lunch day in and day out.
Yeah.
But it's back to your point about when you asked the question, they would have stayed with friends.
Yeah.
Back to your previous example. So yeah,
and ideally,
if you're competing against friends, it's gonna be free. So
yeah, exactly. So and then it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning about pricing and value. And then if you see that value, let's say you have two choices, very simplistically: go in a city, book an Airbnb, an apartment, or a hotel, and then you have that hotel, but you have exclusive events that you can't go into if you're not at the hotel, or you have these super nice experiences, or meeting rooms that offer something different, or whatever that is. Well, then you might be more expensive, but then there's so much more value that you've communicated to the customer that they actually say, I'm going to go with that because that sounds really, really cool, actually. So you need to up your game, and if you do, you have everything in your hands to succeed, I think.
No, it makes good sense.
I think COVID is a great opportunity, actually. It forced us all. It's been terrible, obviously, what happened with COVID. I mean, people have lost jobs. I'm not minimizing the fact, but if there's one silver lining, and we try to be a little bit optimistic, is that it has forced all of us, hotels, hospitality, tech companies, to rethink what we are doing and to say, hey, what we're building, I mean, we're tech companies, is this actually relevant to this new world? We need to be honest with ourselves, because if it's not relevant, well, it's a slow death. So we need to shift, and we need to think what is important today. And that's that.
In a way, we're all going through puberty again. Like, who are we? Who are we going to become?
It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Very
Identity crisis. Yeah.
Very philosophically said, Nikki. Indeed.
I said we're freestyle, but we're not quite getting that far.
I'll log out then.
But actually, picking up on your and we've spoken a little bit here. It's interesting. We laugh at banqueting. We've laughed at standard room and deluxe room. And so some of it is the terminology that's being used. We spoke there about comp set and what are we bringing into the comp set, and do we understand what our comp set is? Well, to truly understand, we've got to do the exercise that you went through, Vasilis, in your previous incarnation, which is, okay, let's actually ask our guests, or let's ask the people that come and have meetings and events with us, or let's ask our community how we could use this space. I think another thing, and I'm probably being a bit pedantic, so I'm sure someone might pick up on this, but when people talk about segmentation, okay, well, segmentation to me sounds like a big chunk of something, a segment of cake, like a slice of cake. We like a big slice of cake, so I want a big segment. And to me, I just look at the granularity back to us with data, and Vasilis, you guys with Geo. I know the data's different, but when you're combining that forward-looking data, when you're combining the data that you already have in the property, when you're then engaging with your guests or engaging with people having meetings and events or engaging with your community, you are gathering wealth of information. So surely now almost using the word segmentation just becomes too broad. I mean, what do we talk? We talk in terms of leisure. We talk in terms of business or corporate. I mean, come on, I could go and stay at a hotel 3 times in a year, one for a business meeting, one I might take my family, and the other I might go with my wife. Well, which segment do I fit in? Do I fit in all 3? Or how about they just engage with me as me? And so to me, guest personas, guest attributes, using this granularity to start to actually identify who are the people that come to us, and then reverse engineer almost our products. I mean, you guys are in this space. I just, host these videos and podcasts, so what do I know? But I mean, is that oversimplifying it, or is that too much? Too far beyond Apple thinking? Because to me that looks like Apple thinking, but having a standard room or my banquet package to me just feels like Nokia thinking. Where does segmentation fit into this?
You're right, and I mean, it's an excellent question. Let's say the segmentation as we know it in hotels was defined in a time where cities were doing 200 days a year where they're fully booked. So the way that you optimize against that is to decoup your business into segments that you understand how you inventory manage these segments, because it's all about deciding who gets to stay and who doesn't get to stay, and if he stays, how much is he going to pay? Mm-hmm. That's what you're trying to optimize for. So, and that worked, and nobody's really questioning it because, we're optimizing for 100% occupancy and we need to get the best out of this day. So now we're in a different world. Although we shouldn't have done that in that way before. We should have already thought different as well. But now it's not a question of doing the same. It's a question of really going out a different way. And I would say to a certain extent, forget about this and think in as a marketeer, as you said, because inventory management, who cares? We just take everybody that wants to come in our hotel. So it's more about generating demand is more about understanding our customer. It's more about designing products and packages and attributes that actually fit every sort of individual customer or group of customers that happen to fit into some sort of, collection. How do you call it?
Like a persona or something.
Like a persona, exactly. Like a persona. So it's all about that. So we shifted from inventory to customer, from managing demand to generating demand, from revenue to marketing. Eventually, revenue management also will become important in a different way. So the question would be now, how do we reconcile the both disciplines together so that revenue managers don't speak Chinese and the other ones speak Spanish, and then and marketing speaks Spanish, and then they don't understand each other. But we need to sort of bridge that together and come up with something new.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nikki?
Yeah, what I wanted to add there is, especially in these times when we're really happy with everyone that walks through the hotel door, it's even more important to understand what these people are coming to do and how we can upsell or delight them more with extra value during their stay. And you can only discover that if you really know who's coming through the door, who's walking through that door.
Yeah. And again, I was probably being a little pedantic or just throwing it out there, and we try to avoid using the word segment, but you're right. If you use your data to build up profiles, then they kind of sit in a segment that you then develop promotions and pricing for. So it's as you say, it does feel a bit like reverse engineering. It's here we have, over the course of the year, maybe 50,000 people stay with us, or it depends what size the hotel is, obviously. But what do we know about them? What are some of the common things that we can identify about them? How do we then group them? So Trevor comes to us as a business customer, and here's a number of other people that have that similar profile. So working with marketing and working with revenue management and the M&E and the sales team, you'll put together a promotion and some pricing that will reflect that persona. But then I'll also get communicated by some promotion where they've identified me as also sitting into a segment, but that it's now family orientated or couples oriented, whatever it may be. And I think, it was kind of, again, it's the terminology. I think what gets me is we use the language and continue to use the same language, rather than actually having that Apple thinking, which is consumer centric, then pull that back, then define from what the data is telling us and how we can group these people together. And then the marketing, the pricing, the promotion, the product positioning all reflects and is far more customer centric. Nikki, you were going to say.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about a good offer for you. If I would have a hotel, I would send you an offer, I think, for a cycling weekend.
Oh, well, there you go. See, knowing me as you
Sold,
do that,
right?
That would be perfect. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And if we make it a pleasure break where I kind of do a little bit of business and tag on a weekend trips on some of the cobbles, that would be great.
Welcome to stay.
Vasilis, do you have anything to kind of pick up on those points? Not my cycling, but the other bits.
Not just cycling. No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we need to generate demand, and we've been with Julia, we've been around for 5 years probably now. So we've seen the evolution of segmentation in the hotels as well. Sorry, I need to use the word again. Trevor will ban me for podcast if I ever say segmentation again.
This is your final podcast on revenue.
No, and what we've seen generally across all our hotels is that the bar segment, which is not people going to the bar, which is less elaborate, obviously, has grown, let's say, to levels which is like now, I don't know, 50% or something like that. And before it was maybe 15%. If you go back 30 years, it was 5%. So you have half of your business sitting in one segment. Well, that's not segmentation anymore.
No, exactly.
Just don't bother with it at all.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point, right? So
save yourself the pain.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a brilliant example of why I'm going to ban segment. No, I'm not. I'm only joking. But it was really used to just illustrate the point. I think your example there is exactly what it is. It's like, we either just kind of wrapping this up because I'm conscious of your guys' time as well. But it is just back to that point of, it feels like this year has been such a hard year, and as you said earlier, Vasilis, it's not minimizing the impact that this has had on individual freedoms, on families, on the trials and tribulations for businesses that this pandemic has had. But you've got to try and, in my view, you've got to try and take something out of those difficult times. And I think it's very easy, in my opinion, to kind of stay doing the same thing that you're always doing from a hotelier's point of view. If you're 85, 90% occupancy, well, if you're making profit, why are you going to change? There's no driver to make that change. Now that we're looking at trying to generate revenue, we're trying to drive demand, it almost feels to me as if it's that perfect opportunity to say, okay, how do we pivot, using what technology companies always talk about? How do we pivot to adjust to how our market has changed, or how the demand has changed? And how do we actually use this to start to look forward and reshape? And then through that, maybe start to redefine, your purpose as a hotel. To me, there just has to be a new way of thinking. It just has to be more Apple thinking, and we cannot afford to go back to Nokia thinking. I think, picking up on your point earlier, Nikki, if I'm a hotelier and I'm sitting there now and I think about Nokia, what does that make me think about their products?
Unbreakable phones.
Reliant. Now, maybe that's what I want to be as a hotel. Maybe I want to be reliant. Maybe I want to be innovative. Maybe I want to be a good solid rock that I can pick up and feel safe with. Or, when you think about Apple, how much more customer centric does that feel? I guess it's just about really defining which camp you might think in. Anyway, we said this was going to be a bit more kind of freestyling. Hopefully, for those that watched it, it worked. Hopefully there was something came out of the discussion that was interested or prompted some thoughts. Any final comments from you guys before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, at least we had fun.
Yeah. If nobody liked it, we had fun.
We had a good way to spend an hour on a Thursday afternoon.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Well, thanks, guys. I always appreciate your time. Always good to talk to you, and thanks for joining us on this podcast and video session. Thanks so much.
Thank you
so much. Thank you, Trevor.
Well, I hope that conversation was of interest, and thanks again to Nikki and Vasilis for joining us. That discussion poses some obvious questions. Is your hotel more like Nokia or Apple? Have you started to adopt a customer-centric commercial strategy? And has your hotel changed its approach in any way as we start to reopen? If you have any thoughts on this, please feel free to comment below. We always value your input. And if you like the discussion, please don't forget to give a thumbs up. I know every video asks for it, but by giving a thumbs up or subscribing, you help raise the profile of this channel, and in that way, you help us to help others. If you're interested in more of our expert insights, here is our playlist, and please don't forget to subscribe. Here is the button. Anyway, thanks again for watching.